Disclaimer. Please forgive me now for there may be mispronunciations in this video.
Forget them, Wendy. Forget them all. Come with me, we'll never have to worry about grown-up things again.
Never is an awfully long time.
Almost everyone has heard the story about Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up. He lives famously in the Disney movie and his very own book, Peter Pan and Wendy. Not only is he in the Disney film Peter Pan, he also thrives in other movies, games, and plays. His story is fantastical, but like Cinderella and other fabled stories, his story is much darker than it's implied. Peter was first mentioned in a story in a book called The Little White Bird by J.M.Barrie, the creator of Peter Pan. He was described as a magical boy, a week old, who flew out of his bedroom window. He flew around for a while before returning to his window, but when he got there, his mother had another baby and the window was shut. Though The Little White Bird came out before Peter Pan and Wendy, it is not a prequel, but instead an inspiration. The Little White Bird quotes, "There is not the slightest chance of his ever having a birthday," meaning he remained an infant forever. His age is different from Peter Pan and Wendy, since in this book, he's older, appearing between 8 to 10 years old, while in the Disney film, he seems to be a teen. Peter would be brought back up in a play called Peter Pan or the Boy Who Wouldn't Grow Up by J.M.Barrie. The popularity of this play kick-started Barrie into writing the book Peter Pan and Wendy. The book is very similar to the Disney movie with some wild changes. To sum it up, Peter teaches Wendy and her brothers how to fly, takes them to Neverland, has adventures, and are taken home after Wendy insists. There are other things that occur in this film, but you should go check it out if you haven't watched it already. The differences can be pretty dark, so let's begin. To start with, a not-so-dark trait is Peter's terrible memory. It is slightly seen in the 2003 movie and in the book.
Who are you?
I'm John.
When Peter has flown away from the Darlings, who is Wendy and her brothers, he returns and asks who they are, having forgotten about them completely until he is reminded of who they are. Wendy finds this about him very annoying. As the Darling kids get to know Peter, they learn more of the darkness that's within him. For example, is how he found the lost boys. He claimed they were kids who lost their parents in a public park in London, England called Kensington Gardens. He approached the children that wandered away from their parents and enticed them to go back with him to Neverland. But what reason is he taking them? It is believed that from both the movies and book, there's a war between the pirates and the Lost Boys, which seems true. And it is thought that Peter's recruiting little boys to help fight as his soldiers in a war he started against the pirates. From what the book says, Peter started this war when he cut off Hook's hand. Some of these lost boys died from this war. There are also people who believe that the pirates were once lost boys who had grown up. If they don't turn to piracy, we learn from the book that Peter kills the lost boys to thin the herd, or when they get too old. He also alters their bodies so they can fit through the tree holes to Peter Pan's underground hideout. And that's not all. He feeds them pretend food because Peter himself can't tell the difference between real and make-believe. This is sort of seen in the movie Hook with Robin Williams. The Darling kids went on dangerous missions with Peter, the first being when Peter takes them to Mermaid's Lagoon. The mermaids here are not like Ariel and are rude and dangerous to Wendy and the entire Lost Boy clan. It is this time when Hook's pirate ship rides out from the fog, and on this ship is the Native American chief's daughter, Tiger Lily, and she is held captive. Hook kidnapped her to retrieve information from her about where Peter's hideout is, but she refused to answer. With no use for her, Hook planned on tying her up to a rock, leaving her there as the ocean tide rose, and then she would drown. However, Peter saves her by impersonating Hook's voice. Hook, for some reason, is not on the ship, and he ordered the pirates to let her go. The real Captain Hook climbs on board a few minutes after Tiger Lily makes her escape and fights Peter Pan. Hook wounds Peter, and he is stranded on the very rock Tiger Lily was supposed to die on. At the current moment, Peter's unable to fly, and makes peace with his oncoming death. A nearby bird sees him though, and volunteers her nest to him to use as a boat. He makes his way back to camp where the lost boys and the natives regard him as a hero. It's at this time when Wendy falls for Peter, and when she asks him what he thinks of her, he says that she's his mother and he is her loyal son. It's different from the 2003 movie where Peter tells Wendy that it's all just pretend. This reminds Wendy somehow about her parents, whom she's been away from for a few days now. She invites the lost boys to return home with her and her brothers, where they can be raised by the darlings' parents as well. Everyone agrees to this arrangement except for Peter. Peter ends up taking a nap as the darlings and the lost boys leave. You think that'd be the end, but it isn't. After waking up, Tinkerbell tells Peter about how the pirates captured the group of children. He heads off to the Jolly Roger, Hook's ship, but not without encountering the ticking crocodile that Hook is so afraid of. Peter impersonates the sound of the ticking to ward off any nearby pirates, and when he reaches the Jolly Roger, he sneaks into the cabin the kids are in and sets them free. That's when the battle between the Lost Boys and the pirates break out. They kill all the pirates except 2, and Peter kills Hook by kicking him into the jaws of the crocodile. Peter takes over the ship and flies the ship with the Lost Boys and the darlings to reunite them with their parents. Peter is selfish though, and flies ahead of the ship to put bars on the darling kids' windows in hopes to make them think their parents didn't want them. But he saw how upset Mr. and Mrs. Darling were and decided against it. In the end, the Darling children are reunited with their parents and the Lost Boys are adopted by the Darlings. Peter makes a promise to Wendy that he'd bring her back to Neverland every week in spring so she can help him with spring cleaning. But this only happens for a few years before he forgot about her completely for 25 years. When he returns to Wendy learns that Peter has forgotten about Tinkerbell, Captain Hook, and the Lost Boys. He makes a deal with Wendy that her daughter Jane will visit him once a year, and once Jane grows older, her daughter Margaret will make the same deal. I hope it doesn't come as a surprise when I say that's not all. The story of Peter Pan wouldn't be where it's at without its creator, James Matthew Barrie, or J.M.Barrie. He's a bit of an oddball himself, with a weird interest with boyhood. It is believed his obsession started in 1867 when James's brother David died 2 days before turning 14, when he was knocked down by a fellow ice skater and cracked his head on the ice. David may have been their mother's favorite child out of the 8 she had. The only comfort she had from his death was that he would stay an innocent young boy forever. In 1898, when James was 30, he was relaxing in Kensington Garden when he met George and John Davies, a 4- and 5-year-old that were walking around with their nurse. He got to know the nurse and the children's parents, and even met their 3 other sons, Peter, Michael, and Nicholas. He became close to the family to the point they started to call him Uncle Jim. This may all seem innocent, but it gets weirder from here. In the book The Little White Bird by J.M.Barrie, he mentions a grown-up man that befriended a kid named David, then lies to David's parents about having his own dead son to create empathy and bond with them. Some researchers were able to dig up a letter that James wrote to Michael Davies for his birthday. The letter reads something like this: "Dear Michael, I wish I could be with you and your candles. You can look on me as one of your candles, the one that burns badly, the greasy one that is bent in the middle. But still, hurrah, I am Michael's candle. I wish I could see you putting on the red skins clothes for the first time. Dear Michael, I am very fond of you. Don't tell anybody." This letter made researchers believe that Michael was James's favorite of the Davies children. The strangest thing is, both Davies' parents died from natural causes when the children were young, but for some reason James was responsible for transcribing their parents' will. In the will, it was supposed to say that the parents wanted the nanny and the boy's aunt, Jenny, to take them, but James changed the name from Jenny to Jimmy. No one knew he had done it. So he was able to adopt the children and raise them to adulthood. And here's what happened to the children. George, 21, was killed in World War I. 10 years later, Michael, 20, drowned and people believed it was suicide. It was said he died in the arms of his lover, who was a man, and that the turmoil within him for being gay led him to depression and leading to suicide. John died of lung disease. Peter took his own life when he jumped in front of a London subway car. Nicholas was the only one to die of old age. And then James, he died at 77 from pneumonia. And lastly, there was a biographer named Andrew Birkin, author of J.M.Barrie and the Lost Boys, who got permission to access Barrie's early versions of the scripts as well as Jane's personal notes about Peter Pan. Andrew found out that Captain Hook was originally not in the story because Peter Pan was the actual villain. A villain that Barrie's notes would refer Peter to as a demon boy. For all we know, he could have had a perfectly platonic relationship with the boys, but others are a little bit more suspicious. James did do one great deed before he died though. In 1937, he left the copyright to all his Peter Pan works to the children's hospital called the Great Ormond Street Hospital in London. They still get payments to this day. I hope you enjoyed this video. I surely did making it. Peter Pan is one of my favorite tales, even with added darkness. What do you think of it all? Did you like this video? Want to support this channel and get early access? Feel free to check out my Patreon page where I create content on cryptids, hauntings, alien abductions, and much more. Can't support me there? Like, comment, and subscribe here.